I'm here in Big Sur, California, spending the weekend at a workshop at the Esalen Center for Theory and Research. Um, it's a workshop where the cultural historian Richard Tarnas is interviewing his good friend and mentor Stanislav Grof, the psychiatrist and a philosopher of psychology, I think you could call him, who is probably best known for his work on LSD psychotherapy. Stan was born in Czech, and it's now the Czech Republic, and when he was like 7 or 8, the Nazis invaded, and then when the Nazis were defeated at the end of World War II, the communists took over, and so his childhood was definitely marred in some pretty serious political turmoil. But he managed to, after being imprisoned by the communists, he managed to make his way through medical school in Europe, and went on to become a psychiatrist, and then moved to the United States, where he began doing research on LSD psychotherapy in Massachusetts or Maryland at various universities, including Johns Hopkins University. And by the late 60s, I think 66 or so, he made his way out here to Esalen, where he developed what is now called holotropic breathwork, which was a breathing technique, basically inducing through hyperventilation, a sort of non-ordinary state that mimics, in a more controlled environment, an LSD experience or a psychedelic state of consciousness. And the reason that Stan Grof found these types of experiences, and LSD in particular, so psychologically fascinating was that they produce non-ordinary states of consciousness that allow for a deeper penetration into the human psyche than we are normally privy to, whether as psychiatric researchers or just normal human beings coping with our own circumstances. Psychedelics seem to open us to realms of experience which are not hallucinatory, but are in fact the deeper substratum of that very ephemeral and superficial form of egoic consciousness that we normally identify with. So if anything, the psychedelic experience is one in which we drop into a deeper layer of reality that is normally hidden from us, either because it is traumatic and emotionally intense, such that we repress it in order to maintain some semblance of rationality as a personality in society, or because these deeper layers of reality are just too numinous, too overflowingly beautiful and divine, that for the purposes of everyday survival as biological organisms, we simply cannot be aware of or be confronted by. We just wouldn't be able to survive anymore. So they produce these states of unity consciousness, and Stan found these states very, very interesting because, well, for one thing, many of his patients began reliving their own births, and after hundreds, if not thousands, of patients experiencing these memories of their own birth through high-dose LSD sessions, Stan came to believe that the majority of people raised and educated by our particular culture at this point in our history, now somewhat post-industrial Western civilization, most of us are unable to assimilate and integrate our own birth traumas, our soul, our psyche's entry into this world through our mother, and the mother having given birth in the majority of cases in a sterile industrial hospital. That most of us are unable to reconcile our sense of being a complete individual with this initial trauma of our births. And so under high-dose LSD sessions or through holotropic breath work or other means of entering non-ordinary states, Stan found that many people relive their own births. And in this type of controlled regression or purposefully induced regression, the re-experiencing of these what Stan would call systems of condensed experience, where really powerful emotional experiences such as birth they get lodged in our memory somehow, in our psyches, and when we re-experience them, we can massage out that knot in our psychic musculature and thereby become more fully integrated with our circumstances, individual beings separated from the womb, from our mothers, and forced to fend for ourselves in a world that we can just barely grasp. And I think as we age, our ego becomes more padded and armored and begins to develop rationalizations to explain this mysteriousness within which we are embedded. But still, we're at a loss when we try to think about and really feel into where we came from and feel into what happens when we die. I think the ego tends to start to collapse, and that this is why transpersonal psychology, like that of Stan Grof, becomes an urgent necessity, especially for a materialistic society like our own, where basic human experiences of, whether it be past life regression or rebirthing or of, life after death, our intuitions about these experiences are denied because our culture has left no room for them for the realities they point to as valid. So one of my professor, who I'm here helping this weekend, who is interviewing Stan Grof, Rick Tarnas, did his dissertation work with Stan, and one of his major discoveries with Stan Grof was that there's actually a very important use for what Rick calls archetypal astrology in this research on LSD psychotherapy. So what they discovered in their research, mostly here at Esalen, was that the dosage that they administered to different patients had less to do with the intensity and character of the experience of their trip than did that individuals what are called transits, natal transits. So when you look at the individual's birth chart when they were born and compare it to the location of the planets in the sky on the day of their LSD experience, the certain aspects, geometrical relationships between the planets in their chart and the planets in the sky will become evident. And there's a long tradition in astrology that has linked certain archetypal complexes to each of the planets, and based on an analysis of the relationship between these archetypes as they are reflected in these astrological charts, in this cartography of the soul of our solar system, Stan and Rick were able to better predict the intensity and the character, the archetypal character of their patients' experiences. So astrology, of all things, was validated by this modern psychological research. And I think what's happening here is we're seeing that, Stan's work is suggesting that most of us don't integrate ourselves